I never thought I'd see strangers walking into my backyard, let alone walking out with my dog in their arms. No knock, no warning. Just a smug woman in sunglasses, clutching a clipboard like it gave her the right to steal. That wasn't just the day they took my dog. That was the day they declared war on the wrong person. They said my backyard fence was too high, that my golden retriever didn't match the aesthetic of the neighborhood. And somehow that gave them the right to trespass on my property and take the one thing I loved most. They laughed when I protested. They rolled their eyes when I begged. But what they didn't know was that I never lose quietly, so I fought back. Not with fists, but with fire in my heart and a plan in my hand. By the end, I wasn't just another angry homeowner. I was sitting in their office, holding their job title, and signing the paperwork to fire every single one of them. And trust me, you're going to want to hear exactly how I did it. If you've ever dealt with HOA madness, hit that like button. If you believe in standing your ground, share this story. And if you're ready to watch justice get served, subscribe. Because this story is just getting started. It was supposed to be a fresh start. A quiet street, trimmed hedges, the kind of neighborhood where everyone waves but minds their own business. That's why I moved here. Just me and Daisy, my golden retriever. I'd rescued her from a shelter 2 years ago. She was skin and bones back then, trembling in the corner of her cage, but I saw something in her eyes, something broken, but still hopeful. And maybe that's what made me take her home. We healed each other, I guess. Daisy became more than a pet. She was family. Every morning she'd be at the door before my alarm even buzzed, tail wagging, leash in her mouth. She loved the backyard. I built that fence myself, 6 feet tall, all legal, or so I thought. She'd spend hours there, lying in the sun or chasing squirrels that never had a chance. At first it was small things. A letter from the HOA saying my grass was half an inch too long, then a fine for leaving my trash bin out overnight by 13 minutes. I paid them. I didn't want trouble. But it never stopped. Every week another notice, another fee. Still, I kept my head down. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd eventually leave me alone. I was wrong. That morning, I was brushing my teeth when I heard Daisy barking. Not her usual excited bark, but something deeper, urgent, panicked. I ran to the back door and froze. 3 people were in my yard, unannounced. One of them was Karen. I didn't know her well, but I knew the type. Perfectly ironed shirt, HOA badge clipped to her collar, and a look like she'd rather be anywhere else than near someone. Like me, Karen was holding a clipboard. One of the men had Daisy's leash. She was pulling, resisting, confused. When I flung open the door and shouted, they barely flinched. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen turned, as calm as could be. "You've been warned about the dog. Section 4.3 of the neighborhood regulations. Breeds over 40 pounds aren't permitted." "She's 35, I shouted, heart pounding. "You can't just take her." She didn't respond, just gave a nod, and the man tugged harder. Daisy yelped. I ran, barefoot across the lawn, but by the time I reached the gate, they were already loading her into a white SUV with the HOA logo stamped on the side. No paperwork, no officer, no due process. They just took her, and I stood there, shaking, staring at the empty space where she'd been, knowing deep in my gut this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The first thing I did was call animal control. I was still shaking when I dialed, pacing the living room like I was trying to outrun my own thoughts. I told them everything, how they came into my yard without permission, how they took Daisy without a warrant or any kind of legal notice. The woman on the line sounded bored. She said if the HOA had filed a complaint, they were likely following protocol. I asked what that protocol was. She didn't answer. Next was the local police. I walked right into the station with a photo of Daisy in one hand and my fence measurements in the other. The officer at the desk barely looked up, said it was a civil matter, and if I had an issue with the HOA, I should take it up with them directly. It was like screaming into a void. Everyone either looked the other way or acted like this was normal. I emailed the HOA. No response. I called. Voicemail. When I finally walked into their office, Karen wasn't there, just a bored receptionist who handed me a printout of the same section of bylaws Karen had quoted. Multiple complaints, it said. Dog is being evaluated like she was dangerous. She was diseased. They wouldn't even tell me where she was. Overnight, everything changed. The neighbors who used to wave stopped making eye contact. The man across the street who once offered me his leaf blower wouldn't answer the door. A woman who always smiled when Daisy ran up to her kids now pulled them closer when I walked by. It felt like I was wearing a target, like I was the villain in a story I didn't even know I was in. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I heard Daisy's collar jingle. I'd check my email 10, 20 times a day, hoping for a reply. Nothing. Just silence. Cold, crushing silence. That's when I decided if no one was going to help me, I'd help myself. I started digging. Late at night, after work, I combed through every HOA document I could find. I studied the bylaws. I printed old newsletters. I checked their meeting minutes, public filings, anything I could legally access. At first, it all looked clean, too clean, but then I noticed things. A signature that didn't match across two different documents. A vote that never happened, but was marked as approved. Fines issued without warnings. Pet rules changed without notice. The deeper I went, the more rot I found. They hadn't just taken my dog. They'd built an entire house of lies and expected no one to check if the walls were hollow. The system wasn't built for people like me. It was built to silence us, smother us under paperwork, bury us in bylaws, and hope we give up before we ever fight back. But they forgot something. I don't let go of the things I love. Not Daisy, not justice. Not this time. I reached out to the only person I could think of who might understand what I was up against. Eli, an old college friend who was now practicing law in a nearby town. We hadn't talked in years, but when he heard what happened, he didn't hesitate. This isn't just overreach, he said. It's abuse of power. We met at my place. Laptops open, stacks of HOA documents spread across the dining table. I showed him everything I'd collected, the signatures, the contradictions, the weird gaps in their voting records. He spotted it almost immediately. Karen's name appeared as president months before any official election was recorded. It was more than shady. It was illegal. We drafted a formal complaint. Every citation, every forged approval, every irregular meeting entry, documented, notarized, and filed with the county clerk and the state HOA regulatory board. It wouldn't bring Daisy home, not yet. But it was the first stone in the avalanche. While the paperwork churned through the system, I stayed quiet. I didn't confront Karen. I didn't post online. Instead, I read through the HOA's own rules. Every clause, every election requirement, every loophole they didn't expect anyone to notice. And that's when I found it. Any resident with support from just 3 verified homeowners could run for a board position during the next meeting. So I did. I started small. Quiet conversations with the neighbors who still met my eyes. The older couple down the street whose flower beds had been torn out by compliance officers. The single mom fined for her daughter's chalk. The man who got a warning because his truck was too blue. People who had been burned and silenced just like me. I didn't promise them much, just fairness, transparency, a chance to breathe again in their own homes. By the time the next HOA meeting came around, I wasn't sure what to expect. Karen looked smug as ever, clipboard in hand, standing beneath the HOA banner like a queen surveying her kingdom. But when the ballots were read aloud, her smile cracked. By 3 votes, I was in. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I just sat down at the end of the table, took a deep breath, and looked at the stack of agendas in front of me, because change was coming, quietly, legally, and this time it was their rules, just not their game anymore. Eli Showed up with a briefcase full of legal pads and a fire in his eyes. We hadn't talked since college, but when I told him what happened, how they took Daisy, how no one would listen, he dropped everything and drove 2 hours just to sit at my kitchen table. He was a few years into private practice now, sharp as ever, and more pissed off than I'd ever seen him. "This isn't just a bad HOA," he said, flipping through their paperwork. "This is corruption wearing khakis." We spent nights dissecting every file I'd collected. Late into the evenings, Eli sat with his sleeves rolled up, highlighting irregularities, underlining missing records, muttering legal terms I didn't fully understand, but trusted completely. And then, buried in the minutes of a meeting from 2 years ago, we found it. Karen's name listed as HOA president months before any recorded election. No ballots, no witnesses, just a typed name and a rubber stamp. She wasn't just wrong, she was never even voted in. That changed everything. Eli helped me file official complaints, one with the county clerk, one with the state's HOA regulatory board. We included every forged signature, every shady fine, every broken rule. I wasn't just fighting for Daisy anymore. I was fighting to take down the entire crooked machine that gave people like Karen the illusion of untouchable power, but lawsuits take time, and Daisy was still gone. So I kept reading, kept digging, and found something almost too simple to believe. According to the HOA's own charter, any homeowner with support from 3 other verified residents could run for a board seat. No fancy process, no long vetting period. Just 3 signatures and my name would be on the ballot. So I got to work. I didn't go door to door. I didn't hang signs or stir up drama. I found the quiet ones, the ones who kept their heads down, because they were tired of fighting. An older man who'd been fined for a garden gnome. A single mom whose toddler's chalk was labeled graffiti. A retired veteran told his flag was too large. They didn't want speeches. They wanted someone to care. And I did. The day of the meeting, the room was full. Karen stood at the front, clipboard in hand, smug as ever. She didn't even look at me when I walked in. But when the votes were counted, her smile cracked. I'd won. By 3 votes, I didn't say a word. Just walked to the end of the table and took my seat. No grand speeches, no raised voices. Just a man who'd been ignored, dismissed and humiliated, now sitting at their table, playing their game by their rules. And I wasn't finished. Not even close. The first time I walked into the HOA office as a board member, Daisy was right. Beside me, her leash in one hand, a folder thick with evidence in the other. She looked up at me as we stepped through those glass doors, calm, steady, like she knew it was finally over. We were both a little different now. She barked less. I smiled less, but we had made it through hell together, and I wasn't about to let it go unanswered. I'd called for an emergency board meeting. The residents were already seated in the community hall. Some curious, some angry, some just there for the drama. I didn't blame them. For too long, they'd been manipulated by a group that ruled more like a regime than a homeowners association. Karen was already there when I arrived, parked in her usual chair like she owned it. She narrowed her eyes at me, lips tight, and didn't even glance at Daisy. "Let's make this quick," she muttered. I stood at the center table, opened the folder and looked around the room. "No, let's make this honest." One by one I laid it all out. The fake election, the forged signatures, the fines issued without proper votes, audio recordings of closed-door meetings that violated our bylaws, photocopies of Karen's name, signed 3 different ways across 3 different years. The room went quiet. Even the residents who used to nod along with every HOA rule were now leaning forward, eyes wide. Karen stood up, red-faced, voice sharp. "This is slander. You have no authority." "I do," I said. "I won the election legally. You never did." She started to shout again, but I cut her off with a letter stamped by the state board, confirming her position was never certified. I watched her face drop as the realization settled in. She looked at the other board members, searching for someone to back her up. They looked away. "Effective immediately," I said. "Karen West, Thomas Lively and Marcia Eaton are removed from their positions due to verified misconduct, forged documents, and abuse of power." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then someone clapped, then more, and suddenly the room was echoing with applause, half in shock, half in relief. That's when two county officers stepped through the back door. Eli had made sure the right people saw our case, and they had come with warrants. Karen tried to backpedal, to spin it all as a misunderstanding, but no one was listening anymore. She was led out, speechless, eyes wide, arms stiff at her sides. Looked down at Daisy, who was now lying by my feet, calm as ever. It wasn't just justice. It was closure, and I had delivered it. It didn't happen overnight, but the change came. Slowly at first. A neighbor waved. Someone I didn't know by name left a note on my porch that just said, "Thank you." The man across the street, the same one who wouldn't look at me weeks ago, knocked on my door with a plate of cookies and said, "You did what we all wanted to, but never could." I didn't need the cookies, but I'll be honest. They meant something. The board was mine now, not to control but to fix. We stripped the HOA down to the studs and rebuilt it with what it should have always been: reasonable, fair, and human. The dog weight limit? Gone. The color-coded trash bin warnings? Gone. We removed the backdoor surveillance system Karen had approved without a vote. And most importantly, we added transparency. Every meeting was open, every vote recorded, every homeowner had a voice, even if it shook. Daisy adjusted faster than I did. She was back to lying in the sun, ears twitching at the wind, tail thumping. Against the grass, like nothing had ever happened. The gate stayed open now, not out of rebellion, just because we didn't need to hide anymore. She was home, safe, free. I'd often sit on the back steps in the evening, watching her chase leaves. Across the yard, thinking about how it all started, about how one act of cruelty, one moment of arrogance, sparked a storm none of them saw coming. I didn't want to be a fighter. I didn't move here to lead anything. I just wanted peace. But when they came, after the one piece of peace I had, they forced my hand. People still talk about it, even now. The board meeting, the takedown, Karen's face when the officers walked in. They call it the night everything changed. But for me, the real victory wasn't just getting rid of her. It was seeing people stand a little straighter, smile a little wider, let their dogs out without fear of fines. This wasn't about revenge. It never really was. It was about reclaiming something that never should have been taken in the first place. I stood in my yard today, bare feet in the grass, as Daisy darted between the trees we planted together. The sun was low, painting the fence with soft gold. Light, and for the first time in a long time, I felt still. They came for my dog, and left with nothing. I took everything back, lawfully and loud.